who talk about assault weapons. They somehow think that these are machine guns that are used by militaries around the world. And yet you and I both know that these are really guns that may look like an AK-47 on the outside or an Uzi, but these civilian versions of these guns are just like any deer hunting rifle. The drug gangs in Mexico, and they're talking about supposedly assault weapons that are being taken down to Mexico, and the media will go and show pictures of machine guns or shoulder-fired missiles or grenades. I like to know where you'd go and buy those in the United States. You just don't sell them. They're not available. The types of civilian versions of these assault weapons are not what the drug gangs want to have down there. The drug gangs want the real military weapons. And yet, with that type of information out there, I can't tell you the number of radio show hosts even that I hear that go and say, well, they're for owning guns, but they'll hear a situation where some police officer gets horribly killed with an assault weapon, and they'll think that these are machine guns or something that are being used. And a lot of it is just people are affected in many different ways from the poor job that the media does in covering this. Some of it's understandable. Some of
understand.
But I think it ultimately has a real effect. And unfortunately, the consequence is that misimpression is going to actually endanger people's lives in the long run.
All right, let's go to the phone. South Carolina we go. Sam, thanks for holding, Sam. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. I'd like to see more coverage, more correct coverage of the Second Amendment when they mention the Second Amendment, as far as the meaning and its relative, use. Is the purpose of the Second Amendment is there for the protection of the people against a tyrannical government. It's not there for target shooting, or duck hunting. I recently saw Geraldo Rivera mention AK-47s and duck hunting, and you don't need one for duck hunting. Well, you might not need an AK-47 for duck hunting, but when the government comes knocking on your door, or when they try to enforce unconstitutional things upon the people, then that's when you need the Second Amendment. And you need an AK-47. It's also frustrating to hear the term assault weapons thrown about so loosely, because any weapon that's used in an attack is an assault weapon. That whether it be a knife, or rock, a
baseball
shooter,
bat, or a baseball
bat, or anything. The term assault weapon has been used to demonize weapons, and we're not demonizing the people who use them illegally, and we're not keeping the people who commit the crimes in jail, and we're not punishing them properly. We're excusing their crimes, and we're putting it off on the guns, and it's just completely wrong. And the Second Amendment needs to be represented properly as being there to protect us against a tyrannical government, which I believe that we're not very far from seeing right now.
Your reaction, John Lott?
Just as a minor point, somebody must be an awfully good shot to hit a duck with a rifle. It's usually people use shotguns to go after ducks. But in any case, look, I understand what you're saying generally about the Second Amendment. I guess what I would just caution people in arguing it is when you go and you talk to most people, I'm not saying that they don't value freedom, but for most people, the bottom line is safety. And they, for better or worse, are willing to trade off some freedom for increased safety. The thing in this case is safety and freedom go together. The types of rules that go and restrict people's freedom that makes it so law-abiding citizens have a harder time to go and get guns also increases crime. And so, but the bottom line is that when you go and talk to most people, the important thing to go after first is the impact that these rules have on safety.
Sure thing. Next up, let's go to Los Angeles, California. First-time caller. Hello, Mike. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you.
Sure.
As I understand it, based on reading of the scientific criminological research over the last 30 years, it shows that gun control actually increases violent crime and never reduces crime. That gun control costs thousands of lives every year, and that gun control endangers everyone, including those who choose not to own firearms. And that's been shown by studies by Professor James D. Wright, by Professor Gary Kleck of Florida State University, of course, by Professor John Lott as well. And all too often, the NRA and other organizations argue that gun control doesn't help, it's a feel-good law, and yet if we argue as a slogan, gun control increases violent crime, turns out we get a large majority of people on our side. And I was actually involved in a survey done back in 1994, a representative of the whole state of Hawaii. A professional survey company was hired, was paid for by the Hawaii Rifle Association. And what we found was that the theme that gun control increases violent crime was the only theme that got a majority of people, even in the liberal state of Hawaii, to oppose gun control. However, if you argued the more commonly argued theme that gun control doesn't help, it does not, it has no effect on violent crime, you get a majority in liberal jurisdictions like Hawaii favoring gun control, because their fallback position is, well, even if it doesn't help, if it can't hurt, why not try more? So what we really have to argue for everyone who's listening who wants to help is point out to everyone what John Lott has pointed out in his books and tonight, and what the other researchers have pointed out, that gun control increases violent crime. It does really hurt. And
here's a simple, I appreciate the points you're making. Here's the simple thing is that even if you were to accept for the sake of argument, and I'm not saying I do, but that the gun control has no effect itself, it takes money. It takes time and resources. As I was mentioning, in Canada, they spent like $2 billion Canadian money on the long gun registration. They could have hired thousands, tens of thousands of police officers over that period of time. We know police reduce crime. And so, even if it has no effect, you're still having to throw money at it, money that you could have used either to lower people's taxes or hire more police or do something else with it, things like having more police that we know would reduce crime. And so just what we'd call the opportunity cost of going and doing those types of rules has an impact on crime itself.
Next up, let's go to Agnes in Houston, Texas. Welcome to the show. Hi, Agnes.
Hi. Your screener said to make it real quick, and I will. Do you think it would help make everyone, the public, legislators, and police, more comfortable if concealed gun applicants had to pass the psychological screening process with a certified psychologist before any permit application is approved? I mean, this would help possibly weed out people that might be considered unstable or, just your comment. Thanks.
Right. Well, I think the thing to do is look at the experience that we've had with permit holders. And what you find is concealed carry permit holders are incredibly law-abiding. Florida, Texas, North Carolina, many other states have online detailed information about the behavior of permit holders. In Florida, for example, they started their right to carry law in October 1987. Between October 1987 and now, they've issued permits to about 1.47 million people. Many of those permits have been renewed multiple times. The average rate is over 2 times having people's permits renewed for 5 years each. Of those almost 1.5 million people, 166 have 0.02 of 1 percentage point have had their firearms revoked for any type of firearms-related violation, and almost all of those are for one type of violation, and that is somebody accidentally carrying a permanent concealed handgun into a gun-free zone like an airport or a school. You may remember some years ago, Barry Switzer, the former coach for the Dallas Cowboys, was late for a team game. He forgot that he had a concealed handgun in his duffel bag, ran through security there to try to get to his plane and set off the alarms. It's true the Dallas Cowboys were having a bad year that year, but nobody thinks that he was going to do some harm there. The thing is, state after state, you see hundreds or thousands of 1 percentage point that people lose their permits for any type of firearms-related violation. These guys are, as law-abiding as you can find. And, putting additional restrictions on these things, additional costs, means you're just going to have fewer people who go and get permits, and that reduces the safety benefit that's there in terms of the crime reduction benefits of having people out there who go and defend themselves. I just finished the 3rd edition of More Guns, Less Crime. They'll be coming out in the fall, and one of the things that I did was looking at the behavior